Welcome and greetings, peace and shalom. My name is Emuna Yisrael, and for those who may have missed tonight's Breaking the Silence Domestic Violence Community Conversations, this date is October 11, 2015. We had one off of social media where we came together and had this discussion. Well, that was a great meeting and gathering. However, for some reason, it didn't record. So for my love of the people and for the love of the topic, that we may get this out, I am recording it once more again. So all praise be to the Most High. Here we go, and I hope this is useful so that we can take a minute to go through the presentation. If indeed you had trouble logging in, I apologize. And for this reason, we're going to do it once again. So as we're taking a look right now, this is the beginning of a short presentation, and it was a community conversation, but you're going to miss that part. But for this part, you're going to, let's see if we can talk about breaking the silence, in the conscious community, so-called black community, and those who are waking up, religious, spiritual community, so many words. There's still things going on behind the closed doors, under the quiet, that people are not talking about. They come out with smiling faces, and sometimes the faces are not smiling. They're hurting and they're broken inside. And we turn a blind eye because it's not our business, or we turn a blind eye because they're supposed to be righteous, they're supposed to be holy, or they're supposed to know better. This information is good for our sons and our daughters, those who have yet to go into relationships, so that they will begin to educate themselves and know what it is they're supposed to look out for, so that they don't find themselves in these same situations and predicaments. Oftentimes the elders served as watch outs. They're the ones who will be able to tell us things to look out for. But in this day and age, when so many people are not even listening to the elders, and the wisdom of the elders are no longer with them or with us, we continue to repeat this quote unquote generational curse. At this time, we can break the silence on this, have these conversations. Hopefully it's not the only one. Hopefully it can go out into other areas that are ailing us, but we do it piece by piece, little by little. And let's begin to talk about domestic violence. So this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is why this is a very opportune time to begin this conversation, because this is the time when the energy is focused at talking about domestic violence. So to begin with, I started off with a testimony that I find for one Kia Granberry. It was on YouTube. She shared this information of her experience with domestic violence. So you may not be able to, oh no, because this is a record. So yes, you'll be able to hear and see it. So let's take a listen. One moment, please. And here we go.
I'm 28 years old, and I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 5 years ago. So I've experienced blindness 4 times, and hearing loss once, and excruciating pain, but none of that compared to the pain and devastation of looking at myself in the mirror with a black eye, being in the hospital with a concussion and a contusion because the man that I thought I was going to marry couldn't control his anger. I questioned God. I wanted to know why he allowed me to be connected to someone who could do that to me. But in my questioning, he reminded me of a prayer I prayed the night before the attack happened. I got on my knees in church and I asked God to show me if this was the person he wanted me to marry, because we were planning to get married. And the very next day, the attack happened. I just remember him sitting on top of me and crossing my arms over my chest so that I couldn't get free. And instead of punching me, he headbutted me over and over and over again. And I can just remember feeling the blood rushing to my face. I was so afraid that I was going to have a black eye because I didn't want anybody to know that this had happened. I just immediately went into, not really survival mode, but I didn't want anybody to know that it happened. And as I could feel my face swelling, I just became more terrified, not about the fact that this crazy man was attacking me, but about the fact that somebody would know he was attacking me. I told my family, we went to the police station, and then they took me to the hospital. I realized that I had started a relationship with someone, but I didn't include God in it until the very end. And I was reminded of the scripture, Proverbs 31:10, that says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her value is more than rubies." And oftentimes we don't know our worth as women. And so a man finds us before we find out who we are. I fell in love with someone before I knew who I was, before I knew what I was worth, before I knew my value, before I knew what was acceptable in a relationship. My family was very integral in me being able to leave. They were my help. We broke up, but part of me still wanted to try to make it work. It wasn't until I really, really, really gave it to God and prayed and fasted that I had the strength to leave. I really found myself in the months after we separated, because my life for 2 years was so intertwined with someone else who God didn't want me to be with. And so it was very difficult not to make the decision that the abuse was wrong, but to live my life without him in it. I lost everything in that relationship. I lost my job and my apartment. I was so sick, and I lost all of my friends. I was isolated. But the moment that I was able to make the decision to walk away, doors began to open up. I got my dream job. I got the apartment I always wanted. I began to travel, and I met new people, and my income increased. Just doors began to open, because I believed that God he was always going to protect me, but he wasn't going to invest in me that much because I was connected to the wrong person. I think sometimes we don't realize that the people that we have in our life affects what will happen to us, what doors can be open. And so releasing him opened up doors for me that I never even imagined could be open. You are worth more than bruises. You are worth more than broken bones. God wants you to be happy and to be loved the way that he loves you, but you cannot receive that type of love until you let go of the counterfeit love that the enemy has tricked you into believing is real.
So that was the testimony. Again, that was her testimony. And there's so many people around the world who suffer in and with domestic violence. It knows no color lines, no gender, which we're going to talk about in a little later. It happens to both men and women, children and elders. And this is her testimony. Again, I played it so that we can hear in her mind, someone coming back from something of this nature, what she was thinking. The shame that she felt, not wanting anyone to know, realizing that she wanted to get into a relationship before she knew what a relationship was, before she knew what to expect of someone, before it got to the point that he headbutted her, and knocked her out. You understand? I thought it also interesting that she was able to get out of the situation, and she found this out, even though according to her, she only prayed after. She didn't pray before, but before she actually went into marrying and now totally committing to this individual, she was shown that the person definitely had some issues that were cause for a rocky relationship, something that we can learn from other people's experiences. It was also interesting to note that she had family who was able to step in. Oftentimes in these type of relationships, the family and friends are isolated, and so you don't find out till way later, and then usually there's no one there to help you. And so in her situation, it turned out for her a good thing that she still had her family and friends around. As I continued, we wanted to ask, when we say the word domestic violence, what is the first thing that comes to mind? It's important to note that words are attached to images in our minds. And not everyone has the same image. Not everyone has the same association. Not everyone has the same experience. And so oftentimes, if we would say something like domestic violence, somebody might see somebody slapping somebody might see beaten and battered woman, if this is the imagery that is playing in your mind. And it causes for oftentimes difficulty in conversation because we don't have the same reference point. Even though there is a working definition, if we don't ask ourselves, what does this really mean to me? If we don't ask ourselves, what is the first thing that came to mind, so that when we come into a community forum, which we had earlier, but this one I'm just going straight to the slides, then we can have that discourse so that we can come to a middle ground of what it is. So we're going to start with the working definition. The working definition says domestic violence is any act occurring between between people who live together or have lived together that causes harm or make one believe the intention is to cause physical or psychological harm. Domestic violence includes beating, pushing, hair pulling, name calling, killing of pets, threats, child abuse, rape, stalking, food thrown in your face, and it includes murder. This is one of the definitions. Domestic abuse is also, as we said before, elder abuse, child abuse, and spousal, not only spousal abuse, but sibling abuse as well. But in this particular break in the silence, we're going to talk about partner abuse, which is man to woman, woman to man abuse in the respect of domestic violence. I got an excerpt from a Time magazine article online that deals with domestic violence in the Black community and why this one author thinks that it is a special case, further exasperated by the issues that plague the quote-unquote Black community. So she says here that Black women are almost 3 times as likely to experience death as a result of domestic violence than their quote white counterpart. I like to say quote unquote, that's for another day and time. But while these quote Black women only make up 8% of the population, it says here that 22% of the homicides that result from domestic violence happen to them, and 29% of all victimized women make it one of the leading causes of death. So this is really an issue in the community as well as at large, because it's not, again, it doesn't know any color line. This has to do with a human condition of not being able to control oneself and looking to exert that power and control over someone else to subjugate them to your will. It says here the age group is usually 15 to 35. Young girls are often prone, especially when they're missing certain elements in their life and they didn't get the first role model of the father, of the grandfather, of the male figure. That first role model is missing and she's in need of something. She's more susceptible to getting attracted to, the attractive type or the charismatic type, but behind that there's some level of wanting to domineer, and eventually it leads to abuse at an alarming rate. It says statistically we experience sexual assault and domestic violence at disproportionate rates, and she's talking about the quote-unquote Black women, and have the highest rates of intraracial violence against us than any other group, and that Black women are less likely to seek help when they are victimized. Again, I'm reading a little excerpt out of a Time magazine article on the Black community and domestic violence. And so, this corroborates with some other statistics as well as some other research that shows that quote-unquote Black people on a whole do not seek therapy when they are experiencing trauma in their life. And that is good for another discussion. But as we continue, she goes into to say why she thinks the reasons why Black women are suffering disproportionately with this abuse, and saying that the issue is compounded with racism as well as quote-unquote sexism, and how it is that she still wants to defend her family. She doesn't want to be the cause of, and I'm paraphrasing here as we go forward, she doesn't want to be the cause. And another issue is not trusting law enforcement and not really feeling as though justice is going to be served. So then why put it out there? Another one I would read here at the bottom of the paragraph, it says, and when we do speak out or seek help, we often or too often experience backlash from members of our communities who believe we are, quote, I'm saying, quote, airing out dirty laundry and making ourselves look bad in front of white people. So there are also emotional stigmas, mental stigmas, community stigmas for addressing this issue. That's why the name of this forum is Breaking the Silence, and really looking at these things to see where they're coming from. Are they right? Are they wrong? Are they continuing, or us having them there continuing to perpetuate the damage and the abuse that is being done in the community? So as we go forward on this excerpt from the Time magazine article, I thought it was interesting to note that she also noted spiritual beliefs and negative views about mental health services also factor into why many, quote, Black women remain with abusive partners. 1 in 3 Black Americans who need mental health treatment actually receive it, and we are more likely to rely on religious guidance and faith-based practices when working through relationship issues. Religious beliefs often discourage divorce, encourage forgiveness, and occasionally condemns those who seek psychiatric services. This is her assertion, instead of relying on faith. And so oftentimes we know that there's a portion that says that we perish for lack of knowledge, and a lot of times it's the interpretation, or dare I say misinterpretation, of what is going on and what we're experiencing that further lets people to sit in silence. There is portions of justice that are supposed to be done for the people who are putting forward the word, and the reason why justice is not being done a lot of times because people are not looking or doing their jobs that they have sit in certain positions to do. And for this reason now, the Creator has become the scapegoat or the escape route for many to say, oh, just wait on the Most High, when really in the earth, righteous judgment is supposed to be in the hands of righteous people to put forth. And so definitely there is an issue in the community and communities concerning this, because no one really wants to take it for what it is and take up our part in it, which is, if we see and know that this is going on, to educate ourselves and to let it be known that it's not acceptable, and not to blame your religion or not to blame your belief system on validating this level of interpersonal relationship abuse. So I think it's important also to note here at the bottom, it says researchers have also found that, quote unquote, Black women report feeling more obligated to fight back than to report abuse, and that is reflected in the disproportionate rates of domestic violence reported by Black men. Our attempts to embody the, quote, strong Black woman, or sometimes they have also the angry Black woman, or whatever it is, the stereotype, have often done more harm than good to us and those we love. And this is her opinions. There are some truths into what she's saying, that the thought process of, oh, I'm not going to play the weak person, I'm going to fight you on this. At the same time, in doing so, there is so much hurt and pain that it causes with those who may be in the household, that even though you're fighting back, it's still trickling down. It still doesn't stop. I think it's important to note at this time that if you do have an image of domestic violence in your head, it might be challenged at this point. Some people may get like a little perturbed, but that's okay, because the truth and the reality is domestic violence is not only man to woman or man abusing a woman. It's also women abusing men, and both of these are common. I saw that is 1.3 million women. This is not including, this is all inclusive for those who report it. It may be more based on the fact that we just read that a lot of people in the quote-unquote Black community don't report domestic violence, but the statistics that they have on record is 1.3 women are domestic abused a year. Also, almost 800,000 men are domestically abused a year, and that's on record. So it's not only just men abusing women, there's women abusing men. At this point, I like illustration, and so we're going to go ahead and take a listen to a short PSA on domestic violence to see what it looks like when it is men abusing women, and then on the other side of that, we're going to take a look at what it looks like when women abuse men in domestic violence situations. And this is all for education and edification, that we can broaden our scope and know what it looks like in our own households, in our own families, in our own communities. And prayerfully, if this is the behavior that we're exhibiting, oftentimes when we don't see ourselves, we look outside and say, no, that could never be me. But listen to some of the verbiage, look into some of the attitudes and mentalities, and see where it is that we can take from and learn from, that we may grow and begin to get rid of this type of behavior and replace it with something more positive. So let's go ahead and take a listen at this short film on domestic abuse.
Growing up, there was nothing we lacked. Nothing material, that is. We had the best neighbors, wore the best clothes, traveled to the most exotic countries, and my mother made the best food. But nothing is ever that perfect. I admired my mother as every girl would. She was a black diamond, such a rare being whose smile would light up an entire room. Her calm voice would put any weary child at peace. and her laughter. That's infectious laughter. She was the neck to my father's head, always at his beck and call. Still, the prettiest eyes have cried the most tears, and the kindest hearts have felt the most pain. Even with all the love, every night remained the same. The kicks and the screams and the loud voices coming from their room at the end of the hall, I felt so weak. There was nothing I could do to stop my mother from the pain. Until that night. There was something different about that night. I saw it in my father's eyes, and I felt it in his words.
The name of it is the Enigmatic Truth.
Anybody in this house? I said, isn't anybody in this house?
Oh, darling, I wasn't expecting you this early.
That's your stupid excuse for not preparing the food once again. I don't know why I put up with such laziness from you, woman.
James, you're hurting me, my arm, James. You don't have to be so irrational. I only just started cooking, and I wasn't expecting you back for another hour.
And you call yourself a good mother. Whereas like your useless child.
Our child, you mean? I'm a good mother. Nobody can take that away from me. I have some good news for you. Do you want to take your drink upstairs?
Will you move from me? Silly woman. So this is where you are. I come back from work and you're just sitting here watching cartoons, Abby. Didn't your mother teach you how to glean? I want to what she teaches you. You can't even find anything reasonable to do with your time? Well, like mother, like daughter. Are you talking back at me? Sorry for yourself. Sorry for yourself. This is how you fail all your exams. Who don't go to your class? Getting first. Do they have 2 heads? You can't even make yourself useful and help your mother out in the kitchen. You know what in the world do you expect me to do with you? Would you shut up? Just shut up. You're such a good mother, huh? Why don't you teach your daughter how to be relevant? My mates are bringing their boys to work, teaching them trade and work ethics. Of what use? Of what use will this girl be? Wait, hold on. Should the food not be ready by now? My friend, come here. I will show you today. Hey, so you're still here, Abby? I will show you who I am today. My friend, come here, show you who I am.
Shall the dreams come to pass? Tell me how many roses turn out real. There are so many questions I would like to ask, so you can understand exactly how I feel.
What do you think happened?
Kill you today. I will show you who I am.
That, I just wanted to stop it there. That's just an illustration of someone's, I don't know if it's a reenactment or a composite or whatever it is, but you know, it goes on basically this struggle. If you're not able to see it at this time and you're hearing it, he came home, he was indifferent, he was verbally abusive, he was dismissive, he verbally attacked his daughter, he verbally attacked his wife. He didn't come with a loving spirit at all. He was angry and indifferent to his family. The wife was very submissive and passive. She, in the scene, if you're not able to see it because it's a little bit thing, she was rubbing her stomach, and so therefore she had some news to tell him, but he didn't want to hear it. He proceeded to curse her about the food and how useless and how inadequate she is, and he said put that on the children as well, and basically it got to the point where he wanted to attack his family at this point, and it seems as though the wife couldn't take it anymore, and she took a knife and stabbed him, and he died. And they're talking about how a lot of violence, a lot of the domestic abuse ends in violence. Sometimes it's fatal, sometimes it's not. I came across something the other day where one of the man's partner, his wife, she burnt him up. And so there's a lot of violence when it comes on to these type of what we call domestic abuse or little spats or love spats. No, it can really get to a different degree, really depending on who you're with. We're going to go into different forms of abuse, but I wanted to look into that shortly so that you can see and hear. Maybe we don't hear ourselves, or maybe that's you and you say the pressure is on you from work and you can't find a job or whatever the case may be, and you take that frustration and transfer it onto your household. The minute you walk into the door, you're disagreeable or you're distant or you're non-communicable, you don't communicate. All of these things go into making the family atmosphere one that's not positive. So by extension, the community will be one, because if your children are witnessing this on a daily, on a weekly, they now have exposure to this, and they now are broken and being shown a wrong way in which to be, you know. So it really does affect us as a whole. There's so many things that are plaguing the quote-unquote black community, and as simple as interpersonal communication may seem to some, it is the basis of the community, because without strong individuals and solid relationships, then you can forget about the rest. You know, working together when it is that no one has each other's back and no one is really willing to go to bat for each other. And really, before it is that someone outside of you can destroy you, you've already destroyed yourself. So I wanted to take a listen to that, because that was just like a really tragic situation. But there's some people who endure that for decades. There's some people who live under that level of verbal abuse from week to week, year to year, day to day, where it is that they don't even, anytime the person enters the door, you already know what you're going to hear and what you're going to experience. And you've been told this over and over, but yet still you don't have the power or the strength or whatever it is to distance yourself from this type of abuse. And it goes on. And this happens for men and as well as women. Women could be verbally abusive, and this is what we're going to listen to now. The domestic violence, when it is a woman, is either verbally or physically abusive to the man. So let's take a listen to this short film. This one is called Numb. It's another very interesting short film. Let's take a listen.
Trying to piss me off or something. I've been at work the whole day and I've got to come home to cook and clean after you every freaking day.
Babe, I apologize. I didn't realize.
You should have used your common sense.
So basically just now she's upset and she came after him with a knife, pointing it in his direction about she's upset that she has to cook and clean. And now she's taking off her makeup and he's going to come and try to approach her to deal with the situation or maybe explain himself.
Hey, you haven't spoken to me properly since you came home from work.
So he tried to approach her and she backhand boxed him. And so this is showing you the physical abuse that women also try to put on men as well. And often sometimes men don't want to hit them back, and so she feels empowered by that and she continues doing it. So now this is another day that she's come from work.
Literally working now. Just, to be honest, I'm quite unsure what you wanted. Bye-bye.
He didn't clean up, you know, he was doing work. They got away from him. The place is a bit of a mess, and now he's afraid of what she's gonna say when she comes in. So now he's hurrying to try to tidy up the place.
How many times have we had this conversation? What do I always say to you about eating in here? Do you know how expensive that computer is? Do you realise that I'm paying the bills in this house and I can't afford to be buying more things?
Hey, I was just doing some work. How do you expect me to stay on top of my...
Treating my house like shit, that's what you've been doing. Do you know what? I've had a really bad day at work. I don't need you to mess it up, okay?
She's calling him names and she's always having outbursts and yelling and screaming, kind of like the other video that we took a listen to. It's the same thing. One is a man, one is a female, but it's the same energy.
And you haven't even cooked. So tell me, Matthew, what have you been doing the whole day?
You did not tell me you would be coming back early.
So I have to give you permission about when I'm coming back home. I mean, since when? Matthew, you haven't cooked, you haven't done the shopping, the fridge is completely empty. I mean, what have you been doing, Matthew? Matthew, what have you been doing? I'm tired from work and the last thing I need is to come home to have to cook and tidy up after you.
Babe, if you can give me 5 minutes, let me wash these dirty plates and I can make you some food. Please.
So we see him trying to deal with the situation, trying to defuse it. But the more he does is the angrier she becomes. He wants to wash the dishes, and she's sitting there, and the anger seems to be building. And now we're going to take a listen to what happens next. This is just to
Are
illustrate.
you ignoring me like some sort of a bitch or something?
So basically you got the viewpoint. I'll try to put a link for this one as well. It's interesting. It's just to hear the verbiage on both situations. It's basically the same verbiage. It's just coming from male energy or female energy. People dissatisfied with their situation, or they want to control or disempower someone else, whether it be because the person in their mind is whatever it may be. Just so many different dynamics to this thing, and I kind of wanted to illustrate what it sounds like. And it definitely doesn't make whoever's on the receiving end feel good, and that's by design. And usually the person who was on the giving end is kind of the bully. Not kind of, they are the bully in the household. And instead of being on the playground, you're actually in the home, and this is where usually people will witness it, such as children, such as neighbors, such as other family members, and it really eats away at the fabric of the household and the family unit. So let's continue, and that was just to illustrate that not only women are abusers or men are abusers, but women as well. Oftentimes women are verbal abusers, emotional abusers. Men are physical and emotional and financial, and it's a whole lot of things. You saw there that she was complaining about finances, expenses and her paying the bills and him using up, the stuff and not being responsible. But we're going to go ahead and look at the 5 different types of domestic violence or abuse. But before we do that, let's go ahead and read here. We have domestic violence doesn't look the same in every relationship because every relationship is different. But one thing most abusive relationships have in common is that the abusive partner does many different kinds of things to have more power and control over their partner. So it's kind of like a combination thing. It's not one thing. It really depends on the personality of the abuser. What may fit for one may not fit for the next, and you really have to just be aware. This information, I got the information, the other article was from Time Magazine. This one is from the hotline.org, which is a resource for people to become aware and learn more information about domestic abuse and violence. Information is key. It can help someone before they get in a situation. It can help somebody out of a situation. It can help somebody to deal with a situation properly so that there won't be as much casualties that we see. So definitely I would advise anyone who's listening to this, anyone who, it may not be for you that this is for, but it may be for someone who you know. So it's definitely interesting and good information to know. So red flags that you may be in the domestic abuse situation. This information is coming from hotline.org. And here are a few red flags. Telling you that you can never do anything right. We kind of heard that in the earlier reenactments or short films. Always telling you that you're no good, you can never do any right. Breaking your self-confidence, your self-esteem. Shows jealousy of your friends and time spent away. They don't like you interacting. They don't, even if it's family, even if it's your parents, whoever it is a very jealous individual. They keep you or discourage you from seeing friends or family members. That's also a sign that you may be in a situation where the person wants to, man or woman, wants to control your movements so that they can basically isolate you and get them to themselves. Embarrassing or shaming you with put downs. Again, they do it to you. They do it in secret. They do it in public. They embarrass you. They shame you. And they make you not feel like a very good person. Controlling every penny spent in the household. This is another way of control, is that, you being a mate or a partner, you have no say. You're treated like a child. Sometimes you're not even given an allowance. You have to wait on them because they are the earner, as we heard the woman say in the film that we just heard. Basically she's controlling him, even though she's the one who's going out, but he has no say. So I get to boss you around, things of that nation. Take your money or refuse to give you money for your expenses. They know you have common things that you need, but they would rather you have to come and beg or debase yourself. Even though you're in a partner, you're in a relationship, it's kind of like stripping you of some level of humanity, some level of self-esteem, so that you will always understand that you're subjugated to that individual. The name of the game is power and control, and that's a way that people exploit one another. Looking at you or acting in ways that scare you. They flinch. They make you flinch. They give you the nasty, dirty, evil eye. Things that's going to scare you into submission. And we're talking about grown adults. We're not talking about children. We're talking about people who are supposed to come together in a relationship that has some mutual type of consent. And what's happening in this relationship is that one power or one entity wants to usurp the power over another. So instead of being a healthy union, it becomes a dysfunctional union in which control is the name of the game. It says controlling who you see, where you go, or what you do. These are all red flags, preventing you from making your own decisions. Because once you're broken in the mind and you feel as though you never make the right decision, you never then you feel basically disempowered as a grown adult. Telling you that you are a bad parent or threatening to harm or take away your children. This is another form of abuse. Preventing you from working or attending school. They want you to subjugate you to where you are. I don't want you to elevate. This is oftentimes the mindset. What do you need to do that for? You have me, instead of being interdependent, you have become dependent, and you really are not encouraged to do anything on your own. This is a form. It doesn't go across the board for everyone. Sometimes it goes in a different way, but this is also a telltale sign. Destroying your property or threatening to hurt or kill your pets. Women often destroy the men's property, burn up their clothes, slash it up, throw bleach on it because they're upset, throw it outside, give it away, all kind of things, destroying property, slashing tires, breaking windows, these type of things is showing that, yeah, you might be in an abusive relationship. Intimidating you with weapons, guns, or knives. Again, it's all about power. If you don't willingly give it to me, then this is the way and means that people in close proximity to one another will try to go about getting it. Pressuring you to have intercourse that you do not desire to have or are not comfortable with, and also pressuring you to use drugs or alcohol. And like we said earlier, especially with the younger teenagers, in the early years, this definitely is something that is to look out for. It's often to keep you off balance so that you don't make proper decisions and that you're easily controlled. These are all kind of things that we need to look out for. They mix it up, the red flags, but to break it all down, 5 forms of abuse. One comes in the form of physical abuse. The next one comes in the form of emotional, psychological, financial, and spiritual. And we saw that mixed up. Once again, that's physical, emotional, psychological, financial, and spiritual. It always doesn't look the same, but if you know the general principle to look for, you'll be able to see it. Now, abuse is not just, okay, you go crazy with money, because sometimes people would take it overboard. If you have a money problem, and in order to make sure the household doesn't go under, somebody who is able to manage the books, one or the other, the male or the female, and is better at managing the books, takes control of that, so that your rent is paid or your mortgage is paid and you're not on the street. That's not abuse. That's someone stepping into a role in order to protect the family from going under. But abuse is when it's gone to where it is that don't worry about where the money is going. Don't worry about, I'm the one who's making it. That kind of talk. You're there for however long, and you don't have $1 for months on end, and what do you need money for? If you need anything, then come to me. That kind of control, it goes to the level of, I want to let you know that you really have no say. You know what I'm saying? And so those are the type of things, the extreme type of things that we need to begin to look out for. Right here on, we have a wheel of power and control, physical violence, sexual, and it talks about what we just read. And so some of the things that they have on this wheel that to look out for is using intimidation, making him or her afraid by using looks, actions, and gestures, smashing, destroying the property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. We read about that earlier. Using of emotional abuse, putting down the person, calling them names, humiliating them, playing mind games with the individual. Oh, that's not me. You said that? You didn't say that. That wasn't me. I didn't do that. That kind of thing. And the person is playing games with you. That's something to look out for. Using isolation, as we read earlier, keeping you away from your family, your friends, things that you enjoy, and they begin to little by little suck your very life force. These are the things that we need to look out for. Minimalizing, denying, and blaming. That means that person invalidates you. If you come to them, you try to speak to them about what did you feel, you never feel that way. They try to tell you what you feel. These are the things, that's the kind of power and control. They're playing games with you. And in order to frustrate you, so that, who knows what their end game is. You really have to know based on your relationship. But it's a tool in which to frustrate the individual, to make them feel like they're not valid. And what they're saying is not true, and they're crazy, Another way to maintain power and control is using the children, as we read before. Using male privilege or treating the person, him or her, like a servant. You make all the big decisions. They have no say so. You act like they're the master and they're the slave. That is also something one has to really look out for. And if you begin to feel like this is not a marriage, then chances are the one partner is not valuing it as such, or may have a different definition of what a marriage is. So before you even get into a marriage, really begin to explore with the individual what are their thoughts. Oftentimes we don't ask these pertinent questions and only get into it and then realize, man, I should have asked that question. What is your definition of a marriage? What are your expectations? And you begin to throw out scenarios and really hear what the person would say, so that you won't be surprised and you can make informed decisions. Using economic abuse, we spoke about that before. Again, preventing him or her from getting or keeping their own job, always having to ask them for money about everything, so they have no access to feel as though they're able to support themselves, and especially as an adult, when you take away that ability, it really breaks a part of your spirit. I'm using coercions and threats. That also, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this. If you don't do this, I'm going to do that. All of those are forms of abuse on different levels. So I got here also excerpt from weaveinc.org. It's going to go right back over those questions of the 5 different types of abuse, and just ask a few questions to see whether or not it's like a test for the individual to see whether or not they're being affected by physical, emotional, financial, sexual, or spiritual abuse. In physical, it says, does your partner push, hit, or choke you? Does your partner threaten to hurt you with a weapon? Those are some signs. It's only 2 questions, but there might be more that you feel that you are physically threatened in your person. That might be a sign that you are in an abusive relationship. Emotional abuse can be verbal or nonverbal. Does your partner continually criticize you? Do they call you names? Does your partner make all the decisions for you? Do they ignore you, as we spoke about earlier in the forum? That's also a part of emotional abuse, when they invalidate you and ignore your needs and your thoughts and your emotions. That also is a form of abuse. Financial abuse may be withholding resources, stealing from the victim, or using the victim's name to incur debt. Does your partner force you to work or refuse to let you work? And do you go to work and they take all the money that you worked for? Is there anything that you are, quote, allowed? Is there a discussion of where the money goes? What kind of arrangement is it? And in that arrangement, do you even have a voice? Do you feel financially dependent on your partner, as we spoke about before? Do you have a voice? How do you feel in that situation? And what is the individual trying to bring across to you? And if it's about total power, domination, and control, then that now is going to make an off-balanced marriage and relationship. Sexually, they say it's often linked with physical abuse. They occur together. Does the person minimize the importance of your feelings? Does your partner, do they force things on you that makes you uncomfortable, that robs your soul and really makes you feel less of human? If you do, you may be in an abusive situation. Spiritual abuse is anything that comes in the way of you doing something or feeling good, they say, about yourself. Does your partner not allow you to practice your moral, religious beliefs, or cultural values? And do you feel that you have given up things that are important to you? Oftentimes, this is where the manipulation happens, in a spiritual setting, quote-unquote religious setting, where it is that scripture and text is taken out of context to suppress. That is a form of spiritual abuse, as well as emotional abuse, because it's taking the fear that the people have of the Creator and taking it in the hand as a weapon to suppress and to rob. At this point, this is the end of the presentation. It was short, but it was just to illustrate that there are so many aspects of abuse, and there's so many things that we can look out for as warning signs to teach our children, to teach the young ones who are coming along. There's also things that give us a heads up for those who are raising the next generation, what to look out for in your children and how to mold them and show them what to do and what not to do. These are the things that we have to take back into our hands to begin to rebuild our community brick by brick, individual by individual. Oftentimes that abuser is also broken themselves. Oftentimes that abuser was abused as well, or they witnessed an abusive situation and they learned that this is the way that I need to act in order to get my way. It's very important that we educate ourselves. If you are in a seriously abusive relationship, you need to seek help in the respect that you need to educate yourself and know the situation that you're in. Everybody's situation is not the same. It's not blanket. Some are more detrimental than others. Some may cost their life. You really have to know who you're dealing with and get educated. There's so many resources. As I said, you don't have to subscribe, hook, line, and sinker to everything that they're saying, but wherever their wisdom is, wherever there's understanding that you may know how to act in your situation, it will behoove the individual to really research and really face the fact of the reality that, listen, this is where I am. You cannot truthfully aid your situation if you're not willing to face the situation to say, this is where I am. So hopefully this was helpful. For those who missed it, I apologize for missing the earlier one, or if I had anything on the side of the webinar, but hopefully we'll be able to have these discussions more going forward. And here are a few resources. The hotline.org, you can read about domestic abuse and all of the information that they have. Remember, it's not only women getting abused, it's also men, verbally, physically, emotionally as well. You have the domestic abuse hotline also for African Americans, that's more geared towards what's going on in the quote-unquote black community, and that's advaac.org. You actually have ncadv.org, and all of these are domestic abuse information sites where it is that you can get more information about your situation and educate yourself on the personality of the type of individual that you're dealing with, so you know how to proceed. So with this, my name is Imuni Israel. This has been Breaking the Silence. I did this one especially for everyone who may have missed the forum. Thank you for sharing, thank you for supporting, and hopefully we will see you next time when we have another community conversation. Thank you and good night.